Sorry.
This is the CEDAW Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women hearings, taking place on Thursday, the 25th of May, 2023 at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. And our next witness is Karen Buczynski, who's coming to us from Bani de Luca in Italy, rather early in the morning for her and in the late afternoon for us. So over to you, Karen Buczynski.
Thank you, Jocelynne, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I was going to begin by going through my 35 years of being involved in the film and television industry. Firstly, what we do know is that women have been at the forefront of film from its inception and have had real power behind the camera as writers, producers, directors, editors, from women such as Alice Guy Blanche used the medium to tell stories. She was the first person to realise the potential for telling stories. And she went on to educate men and women in the United States, and she made over 1,000 films. One of the things she said was, and the reason why I'm bringing her up is because it's relevant to today, is she said that there's absolutely no reason why a woman, she said this in 1910, why a woman cannot completely master every technicality of the art of screen and media. That's what she's talking about. 1910. Now in 2022-23, 21% only of women are working in the technical area in the ABC. That's a shocking statistic. I started to be interested when I was involved in the Fringe network, which ran out of a small little shop in Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, and where people made Super 8 films. And I was involved in the first Fringe Festival and promoting the first Fringe Festival on the radio. So that was my first foray into promoting film. I then was at a party and I heard a woman speak about making flake white paint. And she was so interested in making flake, she was obsessed about making flake white paint. And as an artist, I had used flake white paint, but I had no idea of how it was made or how anyone could be so passionate about making flake white paint. So I asked her if I could make a film about her passion. She turned out to be a woman who had been in a psychiatric hospital and been institutionalized at Kew Hospital many, many years, and she was partially blind. And she said, I will allow you to tell my story through my words, but you must come every single day at the precise time. And if you are 1 minute late, I will not let you in. And she kept to her word. So if I was a minute late, I was not able to interview her. Eventually, though, I gained trust, and we had a relationship. And I made a film about her passion for making flake white paint, and also for her horrendous time in an institution, but how she managed to survive and be resilient and eventually have this wonderful job in the factory. So that's how I started. And that film was called Obliteration of a Nightmare. That was in 1984. in that year, or it was 1983, I can't quite remember, it could have been 1983 actually. But anyway, that in 1984, it was a very important year because it was the Sex Discrimination Act provided for the first time applicants for Swinburne Film School to apply and have and it was non-gender specific. That meant that I applied for 1985, and I did my research and decided that I was going to. I looked at the topics, and there were some topics that clearly were designed to identify the person's gender. One of the topics was the victim. I decided that I wasn't going to fall into that trap. I could see it as a trap, and I wasn't going to write about the victim, but I had read Charles Bukowski, and I thought, I'm going to get into the mind of men, and I'm going to write from the perspective of men, and I'm going to get into the film school. And that's exactly what I did. And then I got to the interview stage. There were various stages, and I got to the interview stage, and I was asked to go to the machine and press the button on. And with that, the paint mimicking blood ran down the screen, and the title of the film came up, and I managed Obliteration of a Nightmare, and I managed to get a place. There was only 2 women in 1985 in film, and there were 6 men. That year was very good for me because generally the fellow students were collegial. There's a group of people flung together in a highly concentrated, creative environment, and I thrived. The ABC was seconded to have a film crew for the first film, and that was when I first came across a recurring theme. The short film was called Venus Knows, and it was about it was an experimental film about a pig, a nude man, and a woman who decided to choose an apple. It was called Venus Knows, and the ABC person said to me, "Do you hate men?" This is a recurring statement, and even 2 weeks ago, E.G. Carroll was asked by the lawyer, "Do you hate men? You must be a." So any woman that pushes back slightly or reveals the truth slightly is considered a man-hater. Then I continued, and I made Anna's 27 Cents. That film was about a woman realizing the world is manipulated by men, while women through the centuries have been observers of the reality, but that it was time for her to claim her place in front of and behind the camera. And that it was a good, I think it was a good film. I don't think it's dated. It was screened on SBS 3 times, and as a consequence, I was asked to make another film, and I was paid for that, and they said I could do anything I want. I thought, oh goodness, this is just absolutely wonderful. I can do anything I want. However, when I did do something that I really wanted to do, it was censored, and in fact, it was destroyed. That was called Contagious. I pursued through lots of every single round from Screen Tasmania, Screen Australia, the Australian Film Commission, it was called, the Victorian bodies, all the government bodies. I put in submissions the stories were usually always about women's issues. There were women's documentaries. There were hundreds of applications that took a lot of time. I did spend 1.5 years collaborating with an animator who graduated in animation the same year as myself. And we spent a lot of time working on a children's live action animation. That was stopped at the C classification board, and it was replicated. We could do nothing because we had no money. We couldn't do anything about it. So my entire 35 years of submissions had been rejections. I was fortunate to, after I'd gone, I moved to Tasmania to meeting Jocelynne, and then I suggested, after I'd read Jocelynne's book, The Incredible Woman, Volume 1 and 2, I suggested to Jocelynne that we make a film and about the history of women from the perspective of the legal perspective. And I think that was a wonderful, wonderful idea. We made The Incredible Woman as a short promo, and we were hoping to get a lot of support from the networks, some network, or the Australian Film Commission to make this series. And we submitted and wrote The Vote That Shook the Nation after that. So continuous writing, continuous submissions, continuous rejections, and why? I have looked through all the network management teams, yesterday, 2 days ago, and interestingly, the statistics for women, say in women's employment, say in the ABC, has improved. It's 55% in executive positions. But it's very interesting because the people who are making the decisions are men. So nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed. In all the networks, the top management jobs have been given to men, apart from one, which is at VIC Screen, Victorian Screen, which is a film body. And there's a woman CEO there. Now, I think that the problem fundamentally is that the philosophy is wrong. So the philosophy is, firstly, I have here the ABC Equity Project, and they talk about a balanced gender representation. But women are in the underrepresented groups. That mentality I can't understand, because the population of Australia of women is 50.4%. So why is it that there is this mentality of the underrepresented group being women? There shouldn't be. It should be an automatic thing, and actually it should be legalized. There should be legislation to say that there must be representation, real representation of Australia's population, which is 50.4%. And so I think that's where the problem is. And the other problem is that their philosophy is based on making money. Now, the real success stories is when you aren't motivated by making money, because you actually don't know what's going to make money and what's not going to make money. We know that historically. We don't know what's going to we don't really know what's going to make money. And the other thing is, if it's motivated by money or economics, then women would never have got the vote. If the whole philosophy is orientated towards an economic decision, women wouldn't have got the vote. So the other interesting statistic is that the mean age for men is 40, and the mean age for women is 43.3%. Now, that's interesting because you have this whole group of women who are highly educated, experienced, have got wisdom, and who are lost. They're lost. They're not, have got no say, no voice, and their expertise is not recognised. And so I have done, I have got a master's, I've got lots of education, I've got a huge amount of skill, I've worked in advertising, I've right at the beginning, and I've submitted hundreds of applications, and I always thought, I'm never good enough, I'm not good enough, I must have more education. But I get more education and it makes no difference. And the real reason is that men are running the show. And there should be avenues for people like you, Marita, to get a budget, which is a small budget, to make your films. There should be avenues for women's voices. And I would be advocating, it can't be done voluntarily. Obviously, the networks and the funding bodies have got to comply with the charter, which is they're bound by the Equal Employment Opportunity 1987, the Racial Discrimination Act 1975, the Sex Discrimination Act 1984, the Human Rights Act 86, etc. But and as I said, there is some improvement, but overall, there appears to me to be little change over the 35 years that I've been involved. So, yes, I would hope that we need to look at countries that are successful, and Denmark has been successful. Denmark has been successful because they have a policy where the government network, like the ABC, is not focused on, or SBS, is not firstly focused on making a profit. And they tend not to have a hierarchical system. They'll have a flat-based system of which is called a feminine system, actually, of production. So they have 4 people involved, and one person drives it, and the other people will support that person, but they take it in turns. And I think that the managers that are paid a huge amount of money, I mean, 1.6 million or 1 million on average is a huge amount of money for a manager, in my opinion. And I think that it's one person's vision for the whole of Australia, where 50.4% of the population is really not considered. And I think that that's just not the direction it should go. So I would be advocating legislation to say that in light of Australia's population of women, that need to be represented as per the Charter, then legislation should be implemented to ensure that there is a sharing of the vision. That's how I would put it. And that there should be equality right across the board, not just selective to comply with the Charter regulations. That's what it seems to me to be going on.
Thank you so much, Karen. I think it's time for questions. So, Helen, Mary, Karen, questions.
Kerry.
Kerry. Sorry, what did I say?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Questions for Karen.
It's for me, Karen. I mean, as you're probably aware, I live in a family of involved in the media and the film industry. What shrieks for me is the fact that the industry is very siloed. The film industry is very siloed, and all men go into this and all women go into that.
Yes, that's true.
The women are in the low end of the financial gain in the industry. And to break that silo up is the big issue about allowing women into the areas, or not allowing, I mean, some of them are in there, but elevating those women who need to go into those industries to extend their career prospects within the film industry.
Yeah.
That's where the obstacles lie for a lot of people, because it's men helping men.
Yes.
And we're going into this silo, the female-dominated areas. I just don't know. I'm at a loss as to how you would overcome that.
Yes. I mean, see, part of the problem is that I've submitted and got to interview stage with producers, but I've come up against a man who said, with regard Vita Goldstein, I've submitted that. My script that took me 3.5 years to research and write. And the first thing he said to me, well, Karen, do you think she died a virgin? I mean, they're coming from a completely different mentality.
Yes.
And how can you even have a conversation with a person that says that? And he's the producer, and that's what you're up against. And you're up against that all the time. And so it seems that the statistics of real creative women's stories being told is they don't have any statistics, it seems. I've tried to look and I haven't been able to find it. But you're up against that sort of mentality, and you can't, I mean, that's just, that there's just no valuing of women's stories. It's just, they're the other 50% and they've got the power.
And it's all,
you're right.
And the decisions are all taken on a commercial basis.
Yeah.
Not and assumptions.
Yeah.
Assumptions about that commercial basis, yes. I really wouldn't mind a story about Marita being made.
Yes. Yes. Well, exactly. And there should definitely be possibilities for that to occur within the organisation.
I would like to know, discrimination-wise in production and in the TV business, how does that get handled? Like you said, you'd go and speak to someone and a producer would say something like that to you. Is there something that it's like, does it just get like swept under the carpet? Like, because obviously we know that, you know, discrimination and sexual harassment happens in the workplace. does it happen quite often in your industry, and like how is it dealt with?
It's complicated because it wouldn't be considered a bad thing. It would be considered it would be considered that you've taken that the wrong way. You would be blamed, and and the person is a nice person. So how can you say that about this nice person who said that? And so I don't think that there are, I don't know what avenues there are. I know it's my experience is that it's quite difficult.
It's about power. Who's got the power?
Yeah. So I just needed to get a response back quickly, and it took me a few seconds to respond. And I responded, well, I sincerely hope she was, because syphilis was rife. And that was my response. And so I was pleased with that response because it took me a few seconds to think of it. But, you know, that's how you deal with it.
Helen, did you have something?
Two little things. One, with Vida, she knew about that. She knew about sexual assault. She used to travel around to all the county courts, taking notes on cases of sexual abuse against children. And yeah, it's funny that, but nobody knows that. They just, you know, so nobody seems to say. Nobody's ever said to me, "Did you know that Vida used to do this?" So I guess, you know, it's pretty not known. And that dreadful song about her, you know, the No Pants. The other thing that I was just thought that last year, at the end of last year, there was a report on discrimination, harassment, systematic discrimination, harassment, and so forth in the music industry. Has that been done in the cinema industry? And do you think that would be useful?
I think it would be useful. It's not that I'm aware.
No, not that I'm aware of. I only saw the report, the music report, in the last week or so, and I was just thinking as you spoke, you know, I wonder, people kind of think that art has an immunity, don't they? So they, you know, you don't want to, that's all sort of part of the industry or the, you know, the game.
I think one of the problems is, isn't it, you've been through film school, Karen, so I know from teaching, teaching in the film industry, there's latitude, isn't there? Because there is this notion that you're meant to be free in terms of being naked, that you're meant to put up with rolling around on the floor with the male lecturers and so forth, so that it's got this culture of we need to be free and we need to be open to all sorts of relations, etc. And I think, did you have that experience in film school, or was it just about actually making films and working cameras and sound and lighting and so on?
There was a little bit of I can't say too much, but there was a little bit of sort of survival gymnastics.
Well, explain what you mean by that, because other people may not know.
Oh, well, you know, I'm reluctant to be very specific. I was told that when the film that I made for SBS was rejected because it was too Greenway-esque, and it didn't fit with video, and I had shot it on 35mm. Now I'm getting to the point. And the woman producer said, if I see that film that I have shredded, I will sue you. Now that frightened me, and there were quite a few occasions of sort of threats in some way, so yes, I won't go into any details.
Can I just ask, why would she sue you?
Because I had been paid $800, and she didn't want the film shown, and she argued that it was her right to do so, but it really was about control.
Yes, yes.
So it's getting back to the history. If you look at the history of women in film, the most upsetting thing is when other women are patronising or threatening to women, and it does happen.
It does. I know of an instance with a woman who's a film director. This was the ABC, and she had her name taken off as director of a film because the changes that were made by a woman producer were unacceptable to her. So yes, that happens, but I guess that
It's quite a lot, actually.
yeah, but what I always think, and that's why I did a book called Living Generously, Women Mentoring Women, is that although I think every woman, at least in the women's movement, has had some bad experience with another or other women, in the end, we've all got and had women in our lives who have been absolutely crucial to who we are and who've been really important and supportive. And I think that the world is set so that we are divided from each other. Therefore, when we do work together really positively, we're actually insulting the patriarchy. We're fighting back against patriarchy.
I agree, Jocelynne. I absolutely agree. And I think the problem also is when there is not equality, there is and really women are fighting for survival often, then it becomes a sort of dog-eat-dog situation. And that's unfortunate. So of course we've got to aim for 50.4% across the board everywhere, and then I think it'll sort itself out. It'll be fair. And
I think a report would be really good, you know, to have those, like in the music report, they go through, you know, they have all the figures set out, percentages, and it's really, you know, you can't argue with it. It's not just sort of, and I think that could be a really good recommendation, you know, because it's going, we're having the reports into Parliament and now into the music industry and into, you know, other places, and then that they seem to have not much effect in the short term, but I think that they're things that you can rely on as, you know, I think it'll be a really good, we should do it.
There was a report done, I think, in 1995 or around that time. It was interesting because I think the outcome was that there were some things that had gone backwards and some things that had gone forward. But I think it's important to you see what the ABC is doing with their great statistic at 55% increase in executive positions. That's great, but then, you know, you compare it to the people that are the technical people, directors, 21%. So but you're right. I think that there does need to be a real breakdown, and with the CEDAW recommendations of reporting, that would I've had a look at that, and I was thinking, well, actually, what is the reporting mechanisms within all the networks and all the funding bodies? What is the reporting that goes on? How are
Perhaps
they?
Perhaps that's one thing we could put in our submission as a recommendation, that when the Australian government makes its report to the CEDAW committee, it must include the statistics on exactly this issue, because we all know how powerful media is. It's hugely powerful in so many respects with regard to our lives. And, you know, as Marita has said, she's got no chance of, well, so far, of getting funding for her film. You've talked about 35 years of submissions and so on. And this information should have to be produced by the Australian government to the CEDAW committee. And I think that's something that we could put in our submission.
Yeah,
One of the things about the film industry and the TV industry is it works on mentors all the way. And whatever area you're in, the person who's mentoring you will take you with them to the next job. So each job has its regular own clicks, and they don't move unless you have a crossover of somebody else taking one of your mentorees into another one. That makes it really difficult when you're to break into an area where you really want to be, to get the experience and so move on. Maybe there has to be a look at ensuring that the people who mentor everybody else has to bring in a percentage of other learners, women, different communities. It could be one way of approaching it. I wouldn't say it's the only way.
Yes, I think that's probably a good way. But I mean, I was trained as a director and a filmmaker, and when I graduated, I knew I could make films. I had various types of work, but to basically to be an independent filmmaker it relies on submissions, and in Australia there is a slate system, so there are certain producers that are anointed, and those producers, and I don't know the percentage of women producers, but those producers then have slates of slates of projects. It seems that the ABC is they're currently going through a recalibration. I'm not exactly sure in what direction, but that's according to the last few days. And there's going to be a lot of people laid off. But so there's room for submissions for recommendations, I would say, at this time. I just think that people who are trained should just be given the opportunity. And mentoring is great, but do I want to be mentored by a man? No, I don't.
But you're not the only female in the industry. There are other women in other areas that maybe will become directors after they've moved through the different silos, we might say. If you're going to start at director level, if you haven't got someone who's going to help you in, it's going to be much harder. But if you've worked your way through the industry already, with people breaking down some of the silos, you have a better chance. Put it like this, I'm not saying you'll ever make it, but it is difficult. You have a better chance because you've established.
Although, Kerry, the statistics don't don't show that. If you start in editing, you will stay in editing. Because I thought, oh, I'll go into editing. I was editing, and I was actually training somebody at the ABC in editing because she'd only edited in video, and I had edited in film. So I trained that person. but that person stayed as an editor. There isn't movement. This is the problem. You get categorized. And so if I know how to direct a film, I should be able to direct a film. And yes, it might be a small budget to start with, then a bigger budget, then a bigger budget, and then a bigger budget. And that's the way I would see as the answer. Rather than, because what are you working your way through exactly? You're not, you know, you're a runner, clapper, loader, writer, you know. Yes, writers are absolutely vital, and there should be more female writers within the organisation supported. I think that's a major area that needs to be looked at. Screenwriting, women's writers.
Yeah, although it's one of the areas that's not valued sufficiently. That's true. Yeah. Right. Well, let's. Is there any urgent questions or issues for you? No. So we'll say thanks so much, Karen Buczynski Lee. It's been really appreciated that you've come on. And I see that it's now 8:44 where you are in the morning.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And it's late where you are. So good night, and thank you all for listening to me. And good luck with the submission.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kerry. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Right. Well, so it's now time for us to wind up and to adjourn until tomorrow. We're coming back at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
tomorrow, and so perhaps each of us could say farewell to the. We've got an audience out there.
Thank you very much for listening in on us, and I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else has learned a lot. In fact, transfixed at times. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. It's been an honour for day one, and I look forward to hearing the stories and hearing everyone's over the next few days.
Thank you. Well, same for me. I mean, it was extremely enlightening, so much of what I learned today. And the variety of the things that I've learned today is quite amazing. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot more tomorrow.
Good. Thanks so much, and thank you. And I'll just give a final quotation. Another American feminist, Alice Paul, around about 1776 said, "Unless women are prepared to fight politically, they must be content to be ignored politically." And what we know is that in this country and elsewhere, women have been fighting politically for centuries, and women have never been content to be ignored politically. And this is what our hearings on CEDAW are, to ensure that women will not be ignored politically. We'll make sure that when we make our submission to CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women Committee, they cannot ignore us, and we will be relying on the evidence of the witnesses before our hearings to ensure that they cannot ignore us. Thank you. Till tomorrow.
Thank you.